All right, guys, welcome to this week's May Chexic discussion group call for tactical sovereignty, and that's exactly what we're doing tonight. We're just doing discussion as people come on the line. Everybody has a live mic, so unless you're speaking, stay muted out or whatever, for everybody else's convenience for listening and being able to talk. And with that being said, we were just talking about self-determination and all the different little rabbit holes that everybody goes down. And some people don't learn until, they've tried certain things and it doesn't work. They try something else that doesn't work, and then they come back and they find what really does work. And a lot of these little stupid rabbit trails everybody gets sent down end up leading people either nowhere, or they do lead them somewhere. They lead them to jail. And that's definitely not the goal that anybody really has in mind. Anyway, everybody just kind of mention who you are and try not to step on each other. That's it.
Well, this is David Williams. I've been on this path for almost 20 years now. It started because of trouble that we got into legally when we were in St. Kitts, living in the Caribbean. We had funds invested in Cayman Islands. 3,100 investors were invested into this program. The government went down through their treaties that they have through OECD and all the banking treaties that they have, and they actually seized $330 million. Our portion of that was close to $600K. And at the same time, her ex-husband was killed in a car accident, single car. He fell asleep at the wheel. We ended up having two legal battles going on at the same time, and a huge reduction in the amount of resources we had because we had to get out of there. We had to sell the house and get out of St. Kitts. The good side of it was we had paid cash for the house, but coming back here, we ended up challenging all the attorneys and stuff involved with the estate because they were turning that into a fiasco. And then we had the other problem with the class action lawsuits on the seizure of cash for titles. And I had a friend of mine that introduced me to David Wynn Miller, and that's where we started our studies. And it started at the end, somewhere around the end of 1999, and has been ongoing ever since then. What happened for me in 2001 up until 2004 was that I finally saw that the courts were extending us a lot of grace, but we were captioning our documents differently because we had ended up adopting something called the Unity States of our world. Now, Miller and Gould and those guys were still running the U.S. flag, but he had actually flown to Bern, Switzerland and filed a treaty. But we weren't the normal group. I mean, when we showed up in the courts, one time we went to court in Charleston, we must have had 20 people there. We looked like a society. And then when we did the Supreme Court thing in 2004, 2005, 21 of us were on the document, but 15 of us showed up the day of filing. So I have been completely impressed with how much grace that the United States court system and the judges actually extend to people, how much honor they extend when they don't have to, because I sued 3 federal judges. I could have been put in jail at any time just for that. And of course, along the way, I met people who've gone to prison, sit there for 6 months to a year and have no trial, no arraignment, no nothing. The longest period I ever heard of is somebody spending in prison with no trial and no arraignment was a guy from Denmark who got arrested on a drug charge, allegedly, but he'd been in prison for 6 years with nothing. Couldn't get his embassy or anybody to help him. But this was my experience and my background. I saw what they did to the guys that were running that program out of the Cayman Islands. I mean, these people were millionaires, and next thing you knew, they had nothing under civil asset forfeiture. They couldn't even have an attorneys that they paid for 10 years to even help them. So I started doing things that you never considered before.
My name is Taz Riot, formerly known as Joe Hayden. I used to work for the Oregon State Police back in 2003, so I have quite a bit of experience in that field and kind of the law enforcement side of it. I found in 2012. Before then, I was kind of following the sovereign citizen thing with the whole Freeman on the land, Dean Clifford, things like that. I came together with people of like mind back in 2016 and formed our own country, our own society called Freeport. And since then, I've got recognition from the United States as well as other countries, including recognition and letters from the U.S. Supreme Court. I actually have a liaison with the U.S. Department of State and can just kind of verify that the information that David teaches is real and legitimate.
Well, the only thing I'll say about that, Joe, and after all these years, and I think, the fact that I had moved to St. Kitts was the fact that I wanted out of this. I was tired of paying taxes to go murder people that I don't know. I had a conversation earlier today about how 2 million Iraqis have been sacrificed on the altar of a lie called weapons of mass destruction. Everybody gets all upset about child sacrifice through religion or whatever's going on. There's a lot of child sacrifice going on in Uganda right now. It's all in the UN and reports and in the news about what's going on there. And everybody wants to take this up as some sort of cause celeb. And I'm like, so these things are horrible, but killing a 23-year-old with a phosphorus grenade from an A-10 helicopter who wants to go to college, be a violinist, get married, and have kids, somehow or another that religious act is more horrible than burning her in the street for doing nothing. And then it's like I told somebody recently, the reason I did what I did is because one of those I was paying for and one of those I wasn't. The reason I don't get involved with religions. Everybody has their own reason why of doing this. But at the same time, I had been in business since I was 26 years old. And I just wasn't upset with the U.S. government because the people I was upset with was the attorneys. They were the ones that were lying, not the government. Nobody told these people to lie to us and then set us up with, under investigation by every three-letter agency you could find and all the stuff that we went through for all those years. So, in 2004, I found a book called The Blue Book of the Sea, ordered it from America's Bulletin. And it was the same guy who had written the redemption manuals. But he had been with the Montana Freemen, spent 5 years in prison where everybody got over 20 because he walked away from them. But he had still been involved. I really can't speak to those issues. I wasn't there. I mean, he and I became friends, but I read his book. I didn't need to read the book to understand UN Resolution 2625. Because as soon as I read it, I understood it. Establish a sovereign independent state or the free associated integration with an independent state. If I could just bring all that up to what I think I'd like to talk about tonight is if you look in the Law of Nations in book number 1, section 220, if you don't find it advantageous, you can quit it. But it also says in 33 that the society is not a society of laws, it's a society of the majority. The minority cannot control the majority. That's just the way it is. And so otherwise it says you couldn't pass any resolution whatsoever without the majority. So for those that are more jealous of the privilege of freedom, for invaluable to those who have tasted it, they may have to suffer that society to do whatever they want to do, but they're at no liberty to have to continue to submit to that government. It says they can sell their lands, take with them all their effects, and form up under another form. And the word another form means a new form. You don't go recreate Prussia. Prussia's gone. And you certainly do not walk across someone else's copyrighted property like the United States of America for those men that actually drafted and signed Articles of Confederation and think for 1 minute that they left that around for you to come pick up and claim for yourself. That's not another form. That's called theft. It's actually subversion and fraud.
David, you're actually touched on something there that I've been looking into the past couple of days. It's been on my mind for a few months, actually. That is, as far as picking something up and rewriting it and going with it or whatever. Looking at, say, for instance, the Constitution and the Constitutional Convention, the requirements, I think it was, 2/3, 9 of the 13 colonies or whatever had to participate in rewriting the Constitution, and that was a requirement.
That was a requirement that they gave themselves.
That was a requirement they gave themselves. That's something I've been kind of thinking about because it's like, to me, this just stands out as being so obvious. They were the ones that were supposed to do the rewriting of it, not some Joe Schmo 230 years later. No, it was set for them. It was set for those states to do, and those states were supposed to be doing it.
You and I both know the states were nothing more than those companies, the Virginia Company, East India Company. This was owned by the nobility. They turned those colonies into states by changing the name from colony to state. They didn't change what it meant because, as it says under indentured servitude, you can go look it up, 2/3 of the people that came to the British North American colonies under the king came as indentured servants from 1607 until the Revolutionary War. These people were their slaves. And they were not doing it for them to be free.
Right, absolutely. But my point is that it was supposed to be the responsibility of those 13 colonies, or 2/3 of those 13 colonies, to do that Constitutional Convention, not for somebody 230 years later to do.
but it didn't have anything to do with the colonists themselves. It only had to do with the owners of the colonies, because the owners of the colonies were called the Lords Proprietors. You can look up the original Constitution of North Carolina, specifically written by the Lords Proprietors in 1669. They did not do this, common man. And under British common law, a noble got no punishment for beating the crap out of his indentured servant with a rake until they died. All this nonsense about returning to British common law, I don't even understand where people are getting this. There was no punishment at all in any court for them hanging an indentured servant who ran away from the Virginia colony to hang out with the Indians because he was trying to escape the harsh treatment that they were getting. And if they found them, they brought them back, and the governor of the colony hanged them just for running away. I just had a conversation with somebody that called that heard me on Sarah's show, and we were talking about this very issue. We were talking about etymology of words. The word colony itself comes from the word colonize. The word colonize is a Latin word that means serf or slave. So there was nothing ever going on here except a war over the divine right of kings, and they literally wanted George Washington to call himself king. Many of them did. But if you read statements like, George Mason, when they talked about having a popular vote, Federalists were like, absolutely not. George Mason even said it. To give the common man the right to vote would be giving the blind man a choice of colors. They're too ignorant. They're too stupid. Now, do you think that somebody that said that I'm blind and ignorant gives a crap about me and my rights?
No, exactly. Yeah, there was a comment that somebody had made this afternoon, and it's one of those things that just totally pulls my hair out. And what they were basically saying, they had written a post, and they said, when are we all going to come together? Right? When are we going to make sure that our Constitution is enforced and that our country runs the way our country is supposed to run and our public servants do what they're supposed to do? And I see stuff like that, and it just makes me just want to scream. It's like, you have no idea what's really going on, do you? Because none of it is ours. They're not our servants. It's not our Constitution. And technically, it's really not our country.
Well, if we go back to what you were talking about.
This is a conversation that David and I had a while ago, talking about how democracies don't work. And I'm going to use the same example here as what I did with him back then. Say you've got 4 people in a car, and you ask the other 3 people in the car, hey, where do you want to go and eat? You're going to get 3 totally and completely different answers. You can't even get 4 people in a car to agree where to go to dinner with, and yet they expect 300 plus million people to agree on a country and how things are to be ran. That's just insane.
But the thing about it is that people can't agree. I mean, you look at 56 men that signed that declaration. They may have fought about it, but they did agree. They signed the compact. Okay, so 56 men did agree. And that's why I've always said that, these things have to be broken up into smaller components, because they're using the welfare state. They're using the slave state to control the slave. Like Brian Smith in there talks about, go watch this little thing called, there's a movie called Dinner with Andre, where they're talking about this very thing. As I've said it for a long time, if you're going to be a sheep herder, get a dog. If you're going to be a human herder, just get another human. That's all you have to do. And we don't need extra species control. We do it to each other. But the conversation that I was just having is how all this false legal theory comes from the false history. If you go to a website called ourdocuments.gov, the United States of America clearly has it on their website that the Articles of Confederation belong to them. And like you said about amending it a while ago, they act like somebody else sent them up there to amend it, like the colonists, like the indentured servants sent them up there to amend it. They went to amend their own work because they were screwing up. And they admitted that they were screwing up when you read the writings of Madison, who said there were 11 defects in the articles. And he also said, because of this, we have violated 3 treaties and we have violated the law of nations. And the untold story is because they weren't paying that war debt, the kings of Great Britain, France, and Spain, and Holland were already threatening to come back here and take the land and kick them out of here. The reason is because they were no longer united under the Articles. They were fighting with each other again, as they had done with colonies. And the reason they were fighting was because they had not given the central authority enough power to maintain control, which is what ended up happening in 1789 when they amended the Articles by attaching the Constitution to it and claiming, okay, Article 6 is now supreme, which means the debt that's been owed will be paid. And this Constitution, all laws passed in pursuance thereof, plus every treaty signed, shall be supreme law of the land and shall be enforced by all the judges in every state. The states have never, ever, ever been sovereign. They don't have one single treaty signed in their name because the kings of the earth would only deal with one central authority. The only problem with that central authority under the Articles, and the reason they had to amend them, was they didn't give themselves enough power initially to make those states pay the debt. And how is it that people think they're free today when they're $22 trillion in debt? Can you explain that one, Brian?
I would even go as far as to say, when you read things in the newspaper and you hear about this sovereign nation or the sovereignty of the United States, myself, I think if you are indebted, if you are indentured to anyone else, you are far from sovereign.
If you've seen the changes in Black's dictionary, see, people want to think that you got to go back to the old ones. You can't go back to the old ones. That's why law changes, it evolves. Common law is called judge-made law. Well, judge's decision changes over time as the society changes. That's what case precedents are about, and those case precedents change. Everybody wants to say, well, the United States of America is under administrative law. I'm like, yeah, that's because administrative law is your common law. Duh.
Well, that's one of the things. If people look back in time and look at that word law, law was actually spelled with two L's. And the reason why is because it symbolized basically two legs. It was mobile. It was moving.
Absolutely. And the W is two L's that are backwards. So it's moving on both ends.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just, from a symbolic standpoint, we studied symbology with all of this as well. There's nothing that there's no rock that we didn't turn over. It's like the word jail. The word jail comes from the word hail. It's just that the J was pronounced as an H. So hail, H-A-I-L, H-E-L-L, telling somebody hello. They've got people that don't even know what they're saying anymore. They're telling people to go to hell as soon as they say hello. I mean, that's not a greeting, hello. The conversation we just had, we were talking about etymology. The word hell in Black 6 means the dungeon underneath the exchequer's table where the king's debtors are thrown. But when I started learning this in 98, 99, around that era, I went to a seminar that was put on by a guy, Albert Esposito. But he was in Monroe, North Carolina. And he actually said in that conference, does anybody in here know why they did away with debtors' prisons in the United States? And nobody raised their hand. He said, anybody want to take a guess? And I'm like, well, I don't even understand that, debtors' prisons. What do you mean? He said, well, the debtors' prisons were when you went to hell, the dungeon underneath the exchequer's table. He said, the reason they did away with debtors' prisons in the United States of America is the whole place is one big debtors' prison. You're all in hell. And it just, when you start looking at things from a perspective where all these maxims that had been out there forever, that the borrower is a slave to the lender. I grew up in North Carolina. People like to have this little bumper sticker years ago on their car that said, I owe, it's off to work I go. So it becomes kind of comical over time. But I guess the thing that we haven't addressed is that, the funny thing, I guess, that has come up this week is that you and I, Brian, are now guilty of attempted murder.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how they came to that conclusion. And it's like, gosh, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to go turn myself in to the Peace Palace at The Hague or something like that? But I don't even have the evidence that I could provide them to show that I attempted murder, so I don't know.
Well, the first thing I would have to know is where someone lives, and I would actually have to try to kill him. Joe, you were in law enforcement. I mean, attempted murder means what?
Attempted murder means that there was a physical, actual attempt to take somebody else's life. That, by definition, is attempted murder.
So, without the physical act?
Without the physical act, there is no attempted murder, because it literally requires for there to be an actual physical attempt on taking somebody else's life. Now, whether that be done with a weapon, with your hands, with a poison, with whatever, it has to be a physical attempt because you can't verbally attempt to kill somebody. You can't verbally kill somebody. You can't do it digitally, so that only leaves physical.
If I get to the bottom line of this, he put up some kind of instrument online called a charging document or charging instrument. There's no such thing as an instrument called charging instrument. You either file a complaint or you file criminal charges, you file an indictment. Okay? And I've already put it out on your Facebook page. I'm sure you saw it, Brian. It's like, here's my address, here's the office or whatever. Send the FBI, send Interpol, send whoever you're going to send. Because I want his address now. And he don't have guts for this. I don't even listen to his stuff because I just can't stand to listen to it. He bastardizes the law of nations like nobody I have ever seen. It takes an insane person to screw up what the word natural born citizen means. And he doesn't want to confront the issue that I'm going to tell people, which is what I put in that broadcast that I put out publicly when John and I were talking about it. Do you think for 1 minute, if you go pull up naturalization in the United States right now, I can do it. I got 10 websites saved about how to do naturalization in the United States of America to become an American citizen. The first thing you have to file that any agency is even going to look at is an N-400. You have to file that document. But naturalization is done in the courts. You take that oath before a judge, and you don't get into a court to go talk to a judge, take an oath from a judge, speak to a judge, or do anything with a judge without being on the court docket. So if anybody wants to tolerate the lies of this moron, I met him in 2011. I was very kind to him back then, and we used to talk infrequently. I learned a little bit about surveying or whatever because of what he was telling me, but it didn't mean much to me because this printing out of a survey. Bryan Parker, I'll ask you, do you think for 1 minute that this man has actually surveyed the United States of America from coast to coast? Or did he just print out someone else's survey and put his name on it?
I would say probably the latter, because in the first instance, you'd probably have to leave your house.
And the guy can't even go to Walmart.
Yeah, we had that conversation the other day.
David, I do want to put a disclaimer out there, though. And that is, I guess, this last week that the people involved have had a come to Jesus moment. I guess if that means accepting Jesus in your heart or whatever, and I guess it didn't happen immediately. It happened 3 days later, which is kind of new from what I grew up learning. But anyway, so anything from here on out that is said regarding this situation will probably now be an attack against God.
Yeah, somebody want to define what that is for me. Does he want to define it? Is he now telling me what God is? Is he telling you what God is? I mean, what is this thing about I haven't heard this before. What kind of come to Jesus meeting did they have?
I don't know, but that's just the latest thing that's been released. So from what I gather from that is that it's laying the groundwork so that any future activity will be a strike against Yahweh or whoever.
Yeah, and that means absolutely zero to me. He doesn't define my life when it comes to spiritual things. He doesn't define anybody's but his own. The thing about it is like, the reason I'm doing this now is because, Tuesday night we're going to do a Zoom presentation. And Brian, you're invited to that. I don't know if we sent you an email on it, but I'm going to put this issue. I got people calling me now. One called last night. I can't remember exactly where he's from, but him and his wife dealt with this nonsense for 2 years. And he claimed that that him and his wife both had round and round arguments with Keith Livingway because he finally accused him of trying to just get his name, change his name, or do whatever he was doing to it for the purpose of stealing his Social Security or getting hold of the quote trust number. And I was sent that same thing by Donovan Frost, this thing called a grant deed of getting hold of the trust number. This is literally a waste of time. Now, a gentleman just called earlier. He's had the same experience, and you've had that experience now. This has been going on. You and I have had several conversations about this. In 2011, he told me that he couldn't leave the house without his wife because he would get arrested if he got behind the wheel of a car. I don't even understand how you can pretend that you are controlling something or building something if you can't even leave your house.
That's a good question.
At least John Adams got on horseback to ride to Philadelphia, right?
Yeah.
and I could go pull up his mugshot online. You can't find my mugshot online. I haven't been arrested. I've had agents show up, but I've never been arrested. They've never charged me with anything. I don't care what their accusations are. Wednesday, I'm meeting with a liaison from Haiti. Talk about us setting up an embassy in Haiti. And then somewhere around between January and March, we're looking at doing an international trade conference or symposium. We've already got 21 people committed from Uganda to come to this. Other people will be coming from Liberia. Some will be coming from the U.S. He can't stop me from doing what I'm doing. He can say whatever he wants to say. And I don't care if he goes and thinks he's building what he's building. I'm just warning people that if you follow this, you're going to end up like the group called Posse Comitatus. You're going to end up like the Montana Freeman, and you're going to end up like Guardians of the Republic and Tim Turner and Sam Kennedy and Sam Davis. Because this is subversion against the U.S. government. If that article said 9 out of 13 states had to agree, which means they had to be there and sign that agreement. You just mentioned this, right, Brian? Where is his signature that he got anyone to agree? Sending off a document to and let it sit there 6 months, who cares? I got people that I knew that were IRS agents. I became friends with them over time. One of them specifically, William Gilmore up in South Carolina, because he after his time in the IRS, he became an enrolled agent to defend people. He got out of the IRS because he got tired of, his manager basically telling him to go shut down business people. Like they just had this vendetta against small business people. And if people want to live in that state, that's great for them. I didn't want to be under that kind of arbitrary power, which is why self-determination was something that I was very serious about. I was serious about it when I went to St. Kitts. I just didn't know that self-determination was what I was looking for. But they know specifically how this government works, and they can tell you all kinds of stories about the inside track. But they'll tell you point blank, if they ever received any kind of folder that said 2-day delivery, express mail, whatever, priority mail, all that kind of stuff, and it was certified return receipt delivery or whatever, if it didn't have some kind of witness in there like we used to do, I actually had people witness me putting that in the envelope, them putting it in the envelope, them signing off on it that these are the documents in the envelope, taking pictures of it and everything. Just because they get an envelope that says priority mail on the outside of it with a return, certified return receipt, well, we opened up the envelope, nothing in there. Nothing. It doesn't mean anything. The matter that he's talking about, like Brian, didn't he say on his slam against me or whatever he was trying to do that the Supreme Court recognized me, but that wasn't really recognition?
I don't know the exact verbiage, but it was essentially to that effect. But recognition is not recognition.
And yet the naturalization process that he wants to talk about is done specifically in the courts. And I've had the courts write to me on more than one occasion. First recognizing them, because they don't recognize anything but states. They have to recognize that first before they will recognize a position within that state. And I got news for him. I actually showed those documents to an attorney from Ghana, and she looked right at me. She trained for law in Sussex in Britain. And she worked with the government. And this was in Atlanta. She'd come in to see a friend, and this friend I knew, whatever. He invited me to come to the meeting. When I showed her the court recognition, that this was signed off on by the clerk and the judges. And I said, well, we still have work to do. This is way back in 2013 or 14. I said, well, I still have work to do because here the government is so bifurcated and one hand doesn't know what the other one's doing. I have to make all this go through the executive branch. I said, because until then, I'm not going to have like full-blown recognition here. And she said, what do you mean full-blown recognition? She said, those documents right there, she said, you can walk anywhere in Ghana with that. She said, that is recognition. Anyway, the real point is that how does he think this is serving his cause by all this slam against everybody else?
I really don't know. And it really depends on labeling what his cause, air quotes, is,
I think really the only way that it could be helping him in any way, shape, or form is just simply getting other people to talk about him and thereby the publicity that he's getting out of it. Even though it's really bad, it's still publicity.
Well, unfortunately for him, it'll be short-lived.
Well, it's going to be short-lived because people that are contacting me, they're sick and tired of that narcissistic nonsense. And the fact that it's going nowhere, and the fact that now have people contact me, like the one that I talked to for 2 hours yesterday. They've given him money and nothing. He's basically stolen their money. All I know is this, and this is the same thing with doing what we're doing. I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars invested of my own personal funds and stuff over in Africa to get certain projects done, like where we put together things like sustainable agricultural communities for a project or whatever. These things have been presented to Ghana, Nigeria. I mean, the first trip to Nigeria cost me $27,000. Ethiopia, Equatorial Guinea. I know that one trip for Ghana was something around 13,000. And Ghana was interested. They were looking at putting up 65,000 acres to do a project like this. But then it had to go through hedge funds because you're looking at, $400 million to $600 million project to do 65,000 acres as a brand new community, building everything from aquaponics to hydroponics to grocery stores to schools to housing, churches, whatever that a community required. Doing power distribution and power generation using solar, biomass. These are the kind of things that I'm looking at doing for the future, that I want to see done for the future. Like I said, he can't stop me. I mean, posting up something called a charging instrument online about some nonsense that people are now starting to question. It's like, what is this? This is like somebody who's frothing at the mouth. And he even said in one of his presentations early on in his T-Bro shows that we don't care what else you go do. Well, then if you don't care what else I go do, then what are you talking about? I'm just telling everybody that your legal interpretations by using the Naturalization Act of 1906, when you're a natural-born citizen and you try to say that the natural-born citizen doesn't matter, when nothing but being a natural-born citizen has mattered for 4,000 years, doesn't work. It's an invalid legal premise. And the United States of America knows it. So from my perspective, hey, anybody wants to go join with that, go right ahead. If you could escape being in prison, more power to you. But I already know where that path ends. I've been watching it for almost 2 decades.
Yeah, absolutely, David. And one of the things also, though, which I think is the most important, is different things like what you're trying to do, like with packages for Haiti. The people there, what they're really crying for is education. That's what they really want is education. And a lot of these countries in South America, Africa, really, really need this help. I think that right now, the United States of America is actually looking at the possibility of a very serious epidemic that isn't even being talked about on the news. And in fact, information, even the past week, has slowed down on it from Western Africa regarding illnesses of Ebola, and a couple other ones that mimic Ebola going on down there that are growing exponentially. And the people down there right now, the biggest problem that they have, in fact, I was speaking to a doctor a few days ago, and he was agreeing with it, with the information that he gets. The biggest problem that they're having down there is that the people don't trust their government. And in fact, they're going and they're killing doctors from the government and things like that because they don't trust them. So what really needs to happen is other organizations like yours or true NGOs, non-governmental organizations. To me, I got to laugh when I see something that they use the label non-government organization because they have to file with the government to become a non-government organization. So I'm like, okay, how are you an NGO then? That makes no sense. But what really needs to happen is for some private people like yourself and others, Dr. Painter, whoever, come out and go down there and really be able to provide the help and to instill the trust with those people that needs to be set up. To me, the people in the U.S. are pretty much gone. I mean, there's people that are learning, they're starting to catch on and stuff like that, but not the way it needs to be. As a whole, I think the people are pretty well brainwashed here. That job has been taken care of. But there's people in other countries that are really wanting to learn. They're really seeking the help. And I'll tell you what, the help being provided to them is necessary, not just for their existence, but for the existence of the world. I was watching a broadcast this morning of how Ebola, and gosh, I wish I could remember those other 2 diseases, but how they've sprouted up now in 5 other countries, and they can't figure out how they sprouted up in these other countries, and they traced it back with the people that do the background checks with the victims, and find that yeah, they had traveled through the Congo or Western Africa. And the thing is, people can spread this stuff. It appears like the common cold or the flu, and by the time you really get diagnosed, that individual has been in contact with what, 10, 20, 100 other people in that length of time. I mean, this is something that could be a worldwide epidemic. And so help being given to those people down there and the education being given to those people down there is totally necessary, because maybe those are the people that will help make the change in this realm.
You're probably talking about cholera, right?
Yeah, no, it's a mosquito born.
Oh, malaria?
No, it starts with a D.
Dengue fever.
Dengue fever, exactly. That's it.
Yeah, it's prevalent in the Philippines as well. You have to be careful with it. Although all these people now are having outbreaks. They got a big, massive outbreak. Over 200 people died in the Philippines because the U.S. has come in with their medical people and done measles vaccines again. You and I both know that when you get a measles vaccine, they just shot you full of the measles.
Also, what they need is a massive influx of B12.
Well, one of the things that we had done, speaking about education in relationship to NGOs, we established an NGO in Liberia and in Haiti. The one in Haiti is called Mission Harvest Haiti, and the other one in Liberia is the International Education Professionals Association, because we've been running education courses there for 9 years. Last year, we actually broke down a private school, which is here in Jacksonville. Last summer, they were redoing their library. Because Dr. Painter has the 501 Foundation here, we went over there. They donated all of their shelves, all of their chairs, their desks, everything, and all of that was put in a container and sent to Liberia. They also gave our NGO 100 acres of land. We built a building over there by sending containers, and we use the containers, take them out to the land. And we have just boots on the ground that are doing it. Setting up IEPA, the NGO there. Our director is a gentleman who works for Liberia University. His name is Mike Sopon. He's been here and met with me 3 years ago. And they're wanting us to do more. Well, they're wanting us to do as much as we can. I mean, they gave us 100 acres of land. And we used the 2 containers for a 40-foot slab. They set down the 2 containers 40 foot by 8 feet. So in the middle of a 40-foot square slab, you're going to have 8 feet and 8 feet, 16 feet. You got 24 feet left over. So you build a wall in the back, a wall in the front, you put in the door, and we sent our trusses for that from Jacksonville to there so that they could put trusses over the containers, which become your foundation, and then build out the roof. So we have a 16-foot square building there. We rented, and I paid for 2 facilities to be rented in Monrovia to run different courses. And then Mike Supon does all that. We're here just trying to help facilitate those things. But our goal with that, as far as Dom University, TNU University, and the ones that are part of this, we applied for it 4 years ago, and they came back with some idiot comment out of a corporation in the UK that, well, you're not on Wikipedia, so you're not recognized yet. And this is talking about the NGO. And we're like, what has Wikipedia got to do with this? And by the way, what have you got to do with it? You're in the UK. So you start finding out that, like, getting a .edu, that's what we're trying to get, is get the recognition to have the .edu. And we're about to team up with a gentleman who already has some recognition here for getting the EDU here in Florida. He actually lives near Chicago, but he's done religious groups and church groups all throughout Mexico and different places. He's very, very popular. And he really needs us more than we need him right now, but we want the EDU for the recognition so that we can we'll go ahead and develop online university and spread out from there. But one of the things that you're absolutely right about, and after doing this for years, they don't want the humanitarian aid as much as they want the education. They're ready for their people to be able to take care of themselves. And
yeah, they want the self-determination.
Yeah, they're specifically seeing this in Haiti. We're seeing it in Liberia. This buddy in California, Gary, got a gentleman that he's talking to in Liberia. This gentleman is connected to the VP, and the VP, she's the wife of the former president who got convicted for war crimes over there. So I'm assuming she's not like him, otherwise she wouldn't be the VP now. But then again, you never know. You never know what's dealing when you're dealing with these nation states of what literally goes on internally. But they're talking about building communities in Liberia, and they're wanting us to see if we can join with them to do it. And of course, I'm all on board having that conversation. But these things don't move quickly. I'll tell you, they don't. You don't deal with another nation state and think that they're in a hurry. They're not in a hurry, and they're going to do all kinds of checks and behind the scenes, and then you're going to have to worry about when you come in there that somebody's holding their hand out. Which is the reason why I work with Dr. Painter, because having boots on the ground on the other end is advantageous, especially when you're trying to get things through customs and get them delivered to the right spot. Otherwise, the locks will get busted open at customs and you'll find your products on the streets in Monrovia or in Port-au-Prince or somewhere else, right? It's been an interesting thing. You start learning how the world works and dealing with these other countries. And you said something about the U.S. Let me ask you a question, Brian. This is something that Brian Smith brought up yesterday, and then I found some videos online. It had to do with a television show talking about these vigilantes working with the government. And it's a show that's on Netflix. And lo and behold, I look over on YouTube, whatever I had up, there were some videos there about how these vigilante police forces are taking back their towns away from the cartels in Mexico. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
Well, they're sick and tired of the drug dealing, they're sick and tired of the kidnapping, and they're sick and tired of the rape. And so you're looking at half the community being armed up, and they're chasing these people down and getting rid of them. I mean, I was just blown away by it. If you look at Mexico, I think the statistic is like 98% of all crimes go unpunished, something like that. I mean, it's ridiculous, and these people are tired of living under that. They're tired. I mean, one woman, her son's been missing for 3 or 4 weeks, 26 years old, and they're pretty sure that one of the cartel groups killed it. And here's another thing about that: who armed them? Who armed the drug cartels down there?
The U.S.
Yeah, that was what the CIA Operation of Fast and Furious was all about.
Yeah, I was going to say that the most public example of that, and it's not the only example, but it's the most well-known in public, is the Fast and Furious operation. And people think that Fast and Furious was the only time that stuff like that's ever.
They just happened to be the only ones that got caught.
And admittedly, the reason why they got so much publicity and it became such a big deal was because of the fact there was a Border Patrol agent that actually tried to do the right thing and he got killed in the process. And that event right there is what turned it into an international headline story. Otherwise, it would have been just the same as all the other operations.
Mm-hmm. Go back to what we were talking about. I agree with you. I mean, we've already seen it. We know. I mean, Wednesday when I go down to Bradenton, we'll be having a conversation about getting the invitation sent to me specifically to fly over and sit down with their Minister of Foreign Affairs and their president, and then talk about putting together the symposium, talk about and setting up the diplomatic mission there. When you have boots on the ground on the other end, we already have somebody there that if we do set up a liaison office, we'll put in a phone and they can man the phones. It might not ever ring for all I know. I don't really care. What I care about is that we have our foot in the door better than we've ever had it. We've been dealing with Haiti for many, many, many years now.
I just want to bring up a point of house cleaning here, I guess I'll put it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Guest 18 made a comment, blacks cannot maintain civilization. Just look at them in Haiti. The U.S. rebuilt for them a few times. They took it away. They turned it into a garbage dump. Let me tell you something. You are very well indoctrinated, and that is the best way to get blocked on the chat here. And if you call back in under something else and make those same kind of comments, you'll get blocked again. Do a little research and learning really what happened with Haiti. When a lot of things were brought down there, they weren't given to the people it was supposed to be given to. I'll say look into the Clinton Foundation. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, even before that, Haiti, before the United States destroyed them, Haiti was a very prosperous island, extremely prosperous.
My mom and her boyfriend go down there on vacation every year, and they love it.
Let me tell you something that's different about these other societies as well, because everybody thinks that, I'll just use this term, they think they're all in the shitter because they don't, quote, have money, because they're not $22 trillion in debt. Let me tell you what the difference is in those people. They could feed themselves. What do you think is going to happen here when, say, Ebola breaks out in Austin, Texas, and they quarantine the city and the National Guard surrounds the city and they put transfer rigs across the highway so that nobody goes in and out? What do you think is going to happen then? You think these people can feed themselves? The most consistent thing I see on this planet is change. I guess if you wanted to say something permanent, the most permanent thing I see on the planet right now has got to be China. And then you got Keith Livingway talking about, well, you have to have an act of association, you have to have an oath, you have to have all these documents. Like, the Law of Nations never says any of that. Do you think that China actually has the original founding documents for China, Bryan?
Oh, heck no.
I mean, hey, I got an act of association for you. Let's let the Grand Council get around together in the teepee, smoke the peace pipe, and have a little act of association where we talk about what we're going to do in our society. Did it have to be written down? I don't think so. The Maori didn't even have a written language until the 1800s. Well, what does this mean, an act of association? Oh, you're saying they didn't have a social compact? They didn't know that they were Maori? I'm confused. No, actually, I'm not confused. Somebody else is confused. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say that we're going to be condemned by God and Jesus? Is that what we're talking about?
I'm just saying that since there's been a come to Jesus moment this last week, that to me that just looks like the groundwork for a religious organization or a religious war.
Sounds like the formation of a cult.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't already formed, yeah.
I agree. It sounds like he's just trying to set himself up to be the next Jim Jones or the next Heaven's Gate cult, where he declares himself prophet or God. Anybody that follows him or that ideology, frankly, I think, number one, they're an idiot. Number two, they deserve whatever they're going to get.
I said it on your Facebook page when I think it was Kelly Christensen asked me whatever got posted in there. And I just wrote out what I was like, hey, here's my address. Let's go. Let's tee it up. I don't care. You want to go to court with me, Mr. Livingway? You want to go actually think that what did he say? This ain't going to be debated. He's a coward.
That wasn't Kelly Christensen. That was Adam.
Oh, yeah. Keith Livingway's telling them that he's already in touch with Europe to get their birth certificate or whatever. I know this from the people that he's been talking to, the ones that have been calling me, going, come on, seriously? You can't drive to Walmart? And you know what bugs me at the same time? You know what doesn't bug me? I just don't care that much. But I did care. I mean, I show concern for people. When he told me in 2011 that he couldn't leave his house, that bothered me. Why can't you leave your house? Well, I have to have my wife to drive because I could get arrested. Who wants to live like that? That's self-imposed slavery.
Well, yeah, that's almost self-imposed exile according to the Law of Nations.
Yeah. But what is this going to tell me about Jesus? Even in that Bible is I have a right to face my accuser. So go ahead and accuse me. Put it where put it in the world court. Put it in Supreme Court. He wants to act like there's no international law going on in the U.S. And I got an entire book in there that's called Law of Nations, Cases, Documents, and Notes on case law right here in the United States. It says international law has always been a part of United States law. It's always been a part of American jurisprudence. So does that mean under diversity of citizenship that he can put that case into a federal court and I can put it into a federal court? I want to see him put it in there that he's the government of the United States of America, not them. That's what I want to see. Go file it in the world court. Article 34, Keith. Article 34 allows you to file your case in the world court even if you're not a member of the UN. Of course, I guess you are a member of the UN because you claim that you're the government of the United States of America under the same land survey that they have. Jeez, that's just... the ridiculousness of it is unbelievable.
We weren't planning on discussing this situation tonight. It was just going to be an open mic night.
Yeah.
But that's fine because a lot of people have had a lot of questions about what's going on as they've only heard one side of things. So,
well, they could hear both sides. If you actually agree to have a debate with a neutral moderator, we can discuss the legal premises in which he brings forward and then be done with it.
Well, there will be no debate. He said on his last show that everything is settled. It's been settled.
Yeah, so for someone to have a right to face their accuser, that's out the window for him. He's running a dictatorship, and I've read his documents. He's turning everyone into citizens of his little town of the reign of heavens, which doesn't exist. He's not getting anybody any immunities. He's not giving them getting them any status or standing that's going to mean anything. He's the dictator. And he's got his other documents that I've read where he claims that that survey he did created a land patent. I got news for him. Land patents are granted by kings. So you don't have the land patent. Patent is not the highest form of title to begin with, Mr. Livingway. The sovereign land grant is the land grant. That's why they split the title from the equitable title. That's why you get deeds. You don't get sovereign title.
Why do you think they call it a certificate of deed or certificate of title? It's because it's just a certificate. It's not the actual document.
Yeah, the only things that Americans control is the equity on the property. You can, if you lose money when you sell it, if you gain money when you sell it, but the state owns the property. And in the Penhallow versus Dones, there was a 3-judge panel review in 1995 of that case because it was a huge admiralty case, and it determined what powers had been granted to Congress, or it actually stipulated them in the case, what powers the Congress had and what powers that the states had, because that was the shift from the Articles to the Constitution, give them more power to be able to pay that debt. But it also changed the admiralty courts because the states were holding their own admiralty courts, but under the Constitution that shifted. And it says that the powers that Congress requested were countersigned by all the governors in every state. See, they were still under a governor because the governors were the ones that were running the colonies and the company. At the appointment of the nobility who were still in England, probably going to the stock market every day or something. Who knows what they were doing? Powdering their wig. It also says that 3-judge panel review specifically states in there that at that time, all private property was in the hands of the states and all public property was in the hands of the United States of America. Meaning like national parks or whatever is United States of America. Well, what did they have? They had the Northwest Territory. They ended up buying Louisiana Purchase. They ended up buying Alaska Territory. They ended up with all of that. All of those things that the USA turned into states. But the other states were all under federalism to begin with, so it doesn't even matter. But if the state is holding the private property, what has that got to do with the individual? The state collectively held it. There's 20 million people here in Florida right now. That is the last census, Brian. You know this. At the time they wrote the Declaration, there were less than 3 million. These states are now bigger than nations were back then. I lived on an island called St. Kitts. 35,000 people made a nation. It's not about the size. It's about the contract. It's about how the system runs and who's running it and who set it up, who has standing within it and who doesn't. I think you've heard me say it for years. I'm tired of seeing good, well-meaning people go to prison over this nonsense, where you can take a legal premise and say, does this premise work? I haven't heard him in years. His first premise that I heard on that 121st T-Row show said that the 1906 Naturalization Act applied to him. He says he was told, well, it doesn't apply to you because you were born here. He's like, so what? I was born here, so what? They said, well, it doesn't apply to people that were born here because you're natural born citizens. And he said, in a way it does. Okay, explain to me the way it does. When it says right there in the margin, naturalization of foreigners and aliens.
Maybe that's the thing. Maybe he's claiming to be an alien.
Well, in 400 and an appointment with the judge, I can name every court, every judge, every person that we talked to, every appointment we ever had, going all the way back to 2001. Still have the documents and records.
I want to bring up something, though, as long as we're on this topic, and that is that I believe within that charging instrument, there was a claim made that had claimed a power of attorney over the government of the United States of America, over his organization or whatever. And I just want to clarify, the only statement that I've made to anybody regarding power of attorney was that there is a claim made that when you do a resident declaration, they take your legal person, your legal entity, and return it to the states of the Union. And my question only was, and the only time I've ever brought up POA was, when did you do that and also provide power of attorney for them to transfer your legal entity anywhere? That's the only thing I ever brought up, because to me that was always a big question. Where has anybody signed over any power of attorney for them to do anything for anybody? Because that doesn't occur anywhere in any of the documentation.
Well, Brian, I think the track record has been set that his perfectly fine with taking whatever is stated and then twisting it for his own personal agenda. I mean, he's done that. I haven't listened to him, but several shows and then the conversations that, I've been hearing with you, David, and other individuals. Every single time, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard where they go, no, I said this, but they turn around and he made this statement. And if it's more than just one person that's having that experience, and that tells you that the individual, in this case Keith, has no problem taking what's been said and twisting it around.
That reminds me of the Miranda warning. Anything you say can and will be used against you.
And that right there is the one thing that anytime an officer makes an arrest, they have to read you your Miranda rights. And that's the thing that people don't listen to, is a statement in there that says, and will be used against you in a court of law. It doesn't say that they may or that they can. It says they will. That's the thing a lot of people don't stop and think about.
Yeah, they'll twist it, which means keep your mouth shut. And it doesn't mean you just keep your mouth shut at the time that you're arrested. It means you keep your mouth shut while you're in the back of the car. You keep your mouth shut when you get to the jail. And guess what? When you get in front of the judge, keep keeping your mouth shut. That's my opinion.
Yeah, because every second that you're being detained in custody, however you want to phrase it, and yes, there's technically a difference between in custody and detained. But anyway, anytime that you're being detained or in custody of the police, everything is recorded on not just one device, on multiple different devices. For an example, you're sitting in the back of a patrol car. There's audio recordings, there's the dash cams, the back seat cams, everything else that records everything. The officers themselves on their radio is a microphone that records everything. Even in the jails and the courts, everything is recorded, both through video and audio. So people think, okay, well, I'm not talking to police right now. I'm just, in my cell or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's still all recorded. Another misconception that I've heard a lot of people say is, oh, well, the statement that I gave didn't get brought up in court, so it must not matter. No. Just because the fact it didn't get brought up in court doesn't mean that it's not in the documents or still being used against. Whether they choose to make that public or not, that's their deal.
Yeah, you were warned at the time of the arrest, weren't you?
Going back to what Bryan just said about them, I listened to just enough of the conversations. Like, I heard something about me having 200 aliases. First of all, that dude that sounds like he's one step from falling into the grave, he ain't got the resources. If I had 200 aliases, he'd never find them. They already know that I changed my name from the birth name that I was given by my parents. They know that I have recognition in that name. I don't use the other name anymore. That name is civilly dead. It's gone. It's over with. I don't need but one name. That name has immunity. Why would I need 200 aliases? How would I even keep up with 200 aliases? That's totally retarded. I'm not scared of what's going on here. I have no need to hide from them. I go to Walmart when I want to go to Walmart. I fly when I want to fly. I've been through checkpoints up and down I-10 where they've got where ICE has their stakeouts down near Waco, Texas, when you're going east on I-10. Bryan here just flew back and forth to St. Louis on our credentials. The car I lease is on my credentials because I run another business. I have never seen a group of people that will just say anything, and for somebody to create a comment that I got 200 aliases, something's wrong with somebody like that. Seriously wrong. Just give me 10 of them. I want to know what 10 of the aliases are, or 20, or 50. Give me 50 of them. 25%. That ain't too much to ask for, is it, Bryan?
No, not at all. Even just 5.
Yeah.
5 of them.
I'm expecting these people to start drinking Kool-Aid pretty soon.
Since we brought up this issue this evening, all the little minions are going to want to be listening to this call to see what's going on. And they're going to say, oh, we're whining and crying. No, we're not whining and crying. We actually find this pretty comical. I mean, in my opinion, it's freaking hilarious. Because...
yeah, I don't disagree.
Well, and here's the thing. Because if people want to hear my side, let me lay it out very quick and simple. For a number of months, I was listening into the Monday night meetings with the air quotes government of the United States of America. And after about 2 or 3 months, Keith piped in because normally I'll be doing other work in the house and stuff, while I'm listening. He piped up and he's like, Bryan Parker, you there? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, I've seen you here for a while. He said, I'm just curious, what's up? I said, I'm just listening in, learning what you got to say, hearing what you have to say. And he said, well, let me explain stuff to you. And so he explained, his theory and stuff. And so for several years, I've been there every week, even though he claimed that I was unreachable, nobody can find me, da-da-da. Okay. On a Tuesday night call that we have regarding the States of the Union, I was getting ready to sign off, and he was like, hey, Bryan, you still here? I'm like, yeah. He said, yeah, Bryan. He said, I just want to let you know, we really want to come on your Tactical Sovereignty call on Sunday night, but you do it over Talkshoe. And I don't like Talkshoe. Talkshoe's nothing but trolls, patriot nonsense. Everybody knows that. The CIA knows that. It's a garbage place to go. He says, set up a different platform and we'll do it there. But until then, no, we're not going to come on the Talkshoe call. And I said, no, that's fine. That doesn't matter to me. He said, no, trust me. He says, if you go to another platform, you'll get more subscribers to your Facebook. And I said, well, I'm not really looking for more subscribers to Tactical Sovereignty on Facebook. I said, I've told everybody from the beginning, Tactical Sovereignty was just a place where I was going and just storing things that I was finding online, and I would go back and look at later. And come to find out, there's more people than I realized interested in this same kind of knowledge. And so the group is growing. But I said, it's not my desire to make it grow. I don't make money off it, anything like that. And he was like, no, trust me. He says, go to a different platform. You'll get more people. I'm like, okay, whatever. That was on Tuesday night. On Friday, he came out with the 125th edition of the T-Rose Show. On there, he says, yeah, Bryan Parker asked us to come on so that we could up his membership in Tactical Sovereignty. And I'm thinking, what? That's the opposite of what was said. And anybody with any honor at all that was listening or was present on that Tuesday night meeting, any of his little minions, would know that's exactly what I had said. And he totally twisted it. And then 2 days later, he came out with a post on his American Herald newspaper or whatever and said, David Williams has taken over Tactical Sovereignty. And I'm like, what? Are you serious? David Williams hasn't been made an admin, nothing like that. And so then he just went on to escalate more and more since then.
Just in having a conversation about this, I'm going to be honest with you. I hate Facebook. I hate it. I don't call it social media. It's anti-social media. Because when you start challenging these people in here, and this is the reason why I'm forming up the anti-troll reform team, I only care about the legal premise. I put on Sarah Westall's show the last time I was on her show 3 weeks ago. If I've got 4 legs of a chair, and each one of those legs is my supporting legal premise for the argument I'm going to make, for whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish, then all 4 of those legs have to be solid, or that chair is unstable. So how many of them do I have to kick out? If somebody's sitting in that chair, and that's their foundation to support their butt, how many legs do I have to kick out for them to fall on the floor? Just one, right? And so what I'm finding is that any of these people, first of all, I'm finding that I just didn't know we did that much work. I didn't know we had done some, I'm looking at people that are saying that this works and that works, and I'm like, well, show me the proof. Show me the evidence. What court have you been into? Where have you put this in front of somebody? What happened when the cops pulled you over? What happened when you went in front of the judge? We did this work more than any other group that I've ever seen, except for possibly the Montana Freemen. But that was with David Windmiller and those guys. And I left those guys in 2006 because of the lies of Russell Gould. Actually, it was before that. But in 2006 is when I took the appointment with the Don. Now they want to talk about the Don. They want to talk about the Many Melchizedek and all the negative stuff that's published out there from 1998. My first question is anybody that's listening to this, what was going on in the United States in 1998? Anybody know? Anybody care? Why do I care what happened in 1998? I didn't come along until 2006. And what kills me even with some of these people, like, well, you can't hold the president responsible for what happened to the other administration. Okay, then why am I being held responsible for what happened in 1998, right? It doesn't matter. I took a bicycle, I took something that had a broken chain, and I fixed it, put a new chain on it. It's not that complicated. It's been done by nation states throughout history. 20, 30 years ago, under Idi Amin in Uganda, they were ready to shut the whole nation state down for all of his human rights violations. Have they cleaned it up? Absolutely. They still around? Yep. They got recognition. I have de jure treaties of peace that have been signed way back in the 90s with Burkina Faso. At least the original founder got something done right. Burkina Faso, Republic of Cameroon, Nigeria. Why would I listen to what Wikipedia or Qualus has to say when I have a government document with a government seal on it? Why would anyone? And when it comes down to news, I had a guy wanted to interview me in Atlanta. This was way back in 2012, and he was like some TV guy, and I was coming through from Houston, Texas, and I sat down with him. And he was like, man, I had a hard time finding a picture of you online. Why are you don't put your picture anywhere? I said, yeah, because on my website, I show people black ink on white paper. What do you need to see me for? Well, you thought that by finding a picture of me, you were going to look at my face and find out if I was trustworthy? Is that how you elected Obama? People need to see the truth. They need to see it in black ink on white paper. And when you're forming a legal premise, you better be able to explain it. I want to see him go to explain to a judge how the Naturalization Act applies to him. And please invite me to that court. I want to see it. That's the only legal premise that I need to knock out. I can knock out 100 other nonsense he has about forming up TRO and citizens and him copying off a document. I said with this, Bryan, here's what we should do. We should all copy off corporate documents for the establishment of IBM, Microsoft, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, and we're going to send in a 6-month notice to the CEO and the board of directors that all of their stock is not going to belong to us within 6 months if they don't rebut the presumption. What do you think is going to happen? We get to walk in 6 months later and tell them all to move out, that we're now taking over?
Well, myself, I like the idea better that we send notice to the Pope at the Vatican, give him 6 months to freaking get off the throne. Yeah, and we declare the metes and bounds of the earth.
Yeah, no, that's what I couldn't figure out. It's like, if you're not claiming America, then why'd you stop at 12 miles outside of international waters? If you're not claiming that you're a U.S. citizen and you were born in America, then why do you care? Just take the survey of the whole planet and tell the king and tell the Pope to get off the throne.
Absolutely.
Anyone who's ever been to a court know that they would be laughed immediately out of court.
And I can back up what David just said about Facebook, actually, because if you go onto Facebook and look up David Williams' profile, what you're going to find probably first thing is a promotion I did for him being on Tactical Sovereignty last December, going on 6 months ago, okay? So when Keith got all upset here a month ago because I was going to be having David come on, and then after David come on, he came out and he said, see, he did exactly what we said we was going to do. He brought David on. We warned him not to have him on. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought like a bottom-up government is in a situation where you're not dictated as to who you can and can't talk to. To me, that sounded like we were 5th grade on the playground and I don't like Susie, and if you talk to Susie, I'm not going to be your friend anymore. To me, that's just...
Well, if I could make a comment on that, I personally feel that the reason why he said that was because David made a comment rebutting his legal premises, and he didn't like that. And so, therefore, he had to attack him, David, as well as you and your group, for allowing him the platform to denounce him and denounce his premises.
Well, I'll say once again, on a recording, he's welcome to debate David at any time, and we'll find a neutral moderator that will give them like 2 minutes each, ding a bell, whatever the case may be.
One of his followers has already been on Sarah Westall's show, and that's where this started. And the reason it started there was because I went and looked at the show, because she had asked me to do that show, and I didn't have time. And what she told me she wanted to talk about was this corporate structuring thing. Because everybody's all about the United States as a corporation. I'm like, United States of America still has the de jure founding posterity bloodline of those founders there behind that government. Because under that government that they did, it said they gave themselves the right to pass all laws necessary and proper. So if we want to set up corporate laws, oh, wait a minute, what does it say in Article 6? This Constitution and every law that we pass, that means a big fat plus sign, every single law we pass, this Constitution and every single law we pass and every treaty we sign and all of that shall be supreme law of the land. The Constitution is not the supreme law of the land, and international law specifically says that all constitutions are of an international public order. So they're trying to maintain order from all this Facebook chaos and stuff that's going on around here. But the point of that is that under all laws necessary and proper, if they want to pass corporate law, that comes under the and all law that we pass shall be supreme law of the land. And if we want to stack 100 corporations deep to do public-private partnerships to run this government over top of your head, we'll put 100 corporations on top of you, and who cares? You're a natural-born citizen. You've agreed to be here, and if you don't like it, then I suggest you quit and stop whining. Facebook is nothing but a steam release valve for people that want to bitch. That's all it is, for the most part. I don't mean you, Bryan, because I don't see that with you in here, but I do see it with other members. So that's how this started, was because Lynn got on there, and in her YouTube chat forum, there were people asking Sarah to please have them on with me to debate the issue about them revamping the Articles of Confederation. And so finally, when it came up on your page, because you let me into your page, into the group, and I've started replying in there to some of these kind of things, I replied specifically to this naturalization crap. Here's how bad he bastardizes the law of nations. I only listened to 20 minutes. I couldn't stand to listen to it anymore. You're sitting here saying that the United States, they put the law of nations in their Constitution. Then he says, well, why is it you never see him pass any laws in relationship to the law of nations? I'm sitting here thinking, you just showed them the Naturalization Act for foreigners. What do you mean they never pass anything in accordance with the law of nations? Book number 1, section 214, naturalization, right there in the book. And to sit here and pretend to people that it doesn't exist and that the United States is said they're going to follow the law of nations and they're not. It's retarded. He would be laughed completely out of every courtroom, starting with Judge Judy.
Well, it's very double-minded and double-speak, and you're referring to Lynn Schmaltz there. I love Lynn Schmaltz. She's great, and I will say, though, on her behalf, if I can, not to put words in her mouth, but she has her own reservations regarding things as well, regarding all of this. So, but you're absolutely correct, because what he says is it's not just double-minded, but it's double-speak. People need to research double-speak, and what it's all about is he uses double-speak a whole lot, where it says one thing and then retracts it later on, but it doesn't make it sound that way. And so it can be confusing to people that don't comprehend what doublespeak is about, because it's really mental manipulation is all it is.
Well, can I just say one thing? The law of nations is not the supreme law of the United States. Every time I hear him speak, it's the law of nations is the law of the land, and it's not. There may be an aspect that makes up the laws of the land, but it is not the law of the land.
If he thinks the law of nations is the law of the land, he's in serious trouble.
I said that is my point. That shows how incompetent he truly is. To make that statement tells you everything you need to know about his understanding of law, especially when it comes to the international realm.
Everybody wants to make this comment about, well, you just need to go live on that island. I'm sorry, under the law of nations, it says in book number 4, section 55, I have the right of embassy. Do you know there's people that have embassies here in D.C. that they assign ambassadors to and dignitaries that actually have permanent residence in the United States? They never leave, ever, in their entire lifetime. What does it say? I can't live where I want to on earth. If I'm a billionaire in France, can I buy a house in every jurisdiction on the planet that will let me live there and go live in it? Can I pick one to be my permanent residence? That's in book number 2, section 135, Law of Nations. I'm really confused about what this man reads, because quite frankly, I don't think he reads.
Here's the situation, David. It was that maybe a year ago, the problem with using Talkshoe was brought up with me, and then it was brought up again here a month ago. when it was brought up again a month ago, and then a total assault came out against me and you for whatever reason, I started thinking back, okay, is there a common denominator? What is there that is maybe causing him to have a lashback? And not just that you had come out letting people know that his premise regarding the law was incorrect, but to me, maybe there was something deeper. And I remembered that one of the things that was always brought up was the use of Talkshoe. So I just went in and punched in his name and Talkshoe. And boy, did I go down a freaking rabbit hole there, because this went back to prior to 2010, people in comments and stuff saying, oh, this guy's just trying to set up his own little world. He's trying to set up his own little, I don't want to call it a dictatorship because that's the word he likes using. Oh, he says, oh, everybody calls me a dictator. I've never called him a dictator. Everybody was just saying he's trying to set up his own little empire. You know, he wants to be the head of something. And everybody was kind of laughing at him. And he actually got a lot of his calls and things with Angie freaking stripped off from her recordings. They don't even exist anymore. He doesn't want anybody to hear it. Angela Stark.
Oh,
Yes, he was on there with Angela Stark and Sam and other people. And then I noticed that this other Dr. Sam, I can't remember his last name, that he had been on with, yeah, he came on his meeting call, and this doctor gave him a raving review. Oh, you got to listen to this guy. He's going to bring you so much good information. And then Keith came on and ripped that guy apart and called him everything but a white boy. He has no standing. He doesn't know what he's doing. Da, da, da. And I'm thinking, this guy just brought you on his platform, and you're dismantling him like this? It's like, okay, now I'm understanding, now I'm comprehending why you don't want people going and looking up your name on Talkshoe, because they're going to find this kind of information. That's what I figured out.
I'm going to cut myself off from this. I mean, honestly, like I said, he can't stop me from doing what I'm doing. I have recognition. He admitted that I had recognition from the Supreme Court. He himself admitted it. And then he wants to turn around and tell everybody that it's not really what recognition is. Well, okay, you live in that planet that you live on, and I'll live on the planet that I live on. I mean, because honestly, like I said, we're doing what we're doing. I'm having meetings. We're doing our education library. We're doing our humanitarian aid and things that we're doing in Haiti. We've got a container sitting in the warehouse right now to go to the Dominican Republic and one to go to Ghana. Okay, and one of those going to the Dominican Republic is not actually ours. We're not involved in that. That's something that the painter does through his foundation. It has nothing to do with us. But I know about these things because he sits down and we have these conversations about what is our next step that we can do, what we can get done, and how we can progress things forward. I'm passionate about this because when I first started, we had those funds taken from us in St. Kitts. I mean, the funds were parked in Bahamas and in Cayman Islands. And mainly the Cayman Islands where cash for titles. You could go look it up online. Michael Goss in Tacoma went to prison. Michael Goss died from brain tumor. They let him go for the last year when he was in prison so his wife could watch him die, all that kind of stuff. I got a lesson right up front in what happens in the prison systems in the U.S. And I didn't want to end up there. And I knew I was on a path to end up. Michael Goss was tortured. And I mean tortured. Nobody could find him for the first 2 weeks. They did sleep deprivation on him. They were drugging his foods. And according to him, I don't know, I wasn't there personally. But Sherry and I did. When we got back from the St. Kitts, when we sold the house, we used to go to Atlanta, meet with his wife, and I used to read the letters. And I remember one letter started, well, 2 more men hung themselves this week. Nazi Germany has nothing on this facility. And this is Men Detention Center in Bronx, New York, because he was in the Southern District Court in that case. And he was being railroaded. I mean, they were doing things to him you couldn't believe. Like they would come in and they would do, first of all, the letter I was reading, he was writing with socks on his hand because they do riot control in the prison. That means they freeze it down with big air conditioning units down to 40 degrees. The guards have to wear heavy coats and gloves, and the prisoners are all sitting in a little 10 by 10 with a little bitty blanket shivering to death. So therefore, they can't riot. Now, I don't give a crap whether anybody wants to believe this. I read it in the letters. Unless for some reason that guy had a reason to lie, I believe the letter. The other thing they did one time was that they came in and the marshals took him into a room, stripped him down naked, chained him to a chair, and turned a fan on him and let him sit there all day long. And when he was begging to go to the bathroom and somebody just stuck their head in the door and said, no, go ahead and defecate on yourself. We'll clean it up later. This was my entire motive for doing everything I did so that I didn't end up in that kind of condition. And it bothers me that people like Keith Livingway come out here and he's no different than Posse Comitatus. He's no different than any sovereign citizen, domestic terrorist, claiming, I've heard him claim repeatedly, that the government of the United States of America is illegitimate, and it is the first indication that you're on the list. Just go read it, Southern Poverty Law Center. I don't care what he has to say about what a sovereign citizen is. I care what they have to say about it. Because if they think you're subverting their government, they will do away with you. Ask any of the guys down in Guantanamo Bay. Hey, even if he has his own separate state, there's 350 million that agree that that's their government. What am I going to say, that they're all wrong? He says they're all wrong.
Here's the thing also. You've been on Tactical Sovereignty more times than he had realized until 4 months ago, or 4 weeks ago, rather. And at no time in Tactical Sovereignty have I ever promoted the Dominion of Melchizedek. I don't really know that much about it, and I haven't joined it.
We haven't even talked about it.
And you've not even promoted it to me or asked me to join, nothing like that. The only thing I did promote was stuff that was going on within the air quotes government of the United States of America. All right. So for him to be worried that I was promoting something other than himself, it just totally blows my mind. And like I said, that takes me right back to the grade school playground.
But the first thing that I didn't talk about it even on the conversations that we had back in December, and the reason why is because I promote self-determination. If somebody says, okay, we want to come look at what you're doing, then fine. They come here. Come here to sit down and see paper, to meet people, to see what we're doing. I mean, who in their right mind? I mean, I've had people come in here from Australia, from Canada. Two of the guys that came in were from India. I've got somebody right now who's emailing me wanting to see paperwork and stuff, and he's in the United Arab Emirates. But the point is that self-determination comes first. That comes first. The knowledge of self-determination comes first.
David, wait. Don't you charge people $15,000 just to see the paperwork?
No, absolutely not. Oh, and by the way, that
David, do you want to address that? These claims made by Todd Kynette and the 20,000 and the 15,000.
Yeah, the same 20,000 he lost, I lost, because we were trying to get something done then. Well, I'll tell you something about trying to get something done when you're brand new. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you think every dime in the United States of America got spent properly when they did their Declaration of Independence? Seriously? I just talked to a friend of mine who started an Amazon business. He told me he wasted $3,000 the first month. The first month.
Let me bring something up here, okay? Because this isn't divulged on T-Row or whatever where Todd is talking his crap. I'll let everybody here know right now. Todd Kynette, that was even spoke about in the last T-Row. Sure, you can look up Todd Kynette on Facebook, and it says wife beater on there. And like I had told David, I don't know, maybe his ex-wife put it on there or something. Well, according to Keith, the son put it on there. Okay, big deal. The name that Todd really uses on Facebook is Todd Cosmeb. C-O-S-M-E-B. Go look up Todd's Facebook, Todd Cosmeb. Let me tell you something. You are going to see some of the filthiest crap in the world. This isn't somebody I would trust paying attention to any of their stuff. And this is supposed to be a witness? You got to be kidding me. I just want to put out there for the record, because guess what? T-Row doesn't let everybody know that. So I'll let you know that. Go take a look at his freaking page.
Yeah, well, this is the kind of people he's attracted. But I'll be honest with you. I used to talk to Todd and his wife Sheree all the time because they had marital problems. But it wasn't just that. I mean, I was actually friends with them, and they were joining with what we were trying to do with the Solid Earth Alliance. Arthur Alexander was the head of it. He was running it. We were paying into a treasury to try to get things done. It didn't work out. It didn't work out, not because of us, but because of the one that was the head. Because as I said, he changed his name from Michael Dreisaitl. He adopted the name Arthur Alexander Augustus. If that tells you about the arrogance of that character, well, there you go. King Arthur, Alexander the Great, and Caesar Augustus. But I didn't pay any attention to it because I didn't really care. I was trying to learn self-determination because at the end of the day, if I didn't like being under the Sovereign Earth Alliance, I could go form something else. I was already a member of the DOM. I was trying to merge the two together. And the reason is because he was in the government of Kansas. He actually had more governmental experience than anybody I'd ever met in knowing how to run things. So for me, it was a learning process. I don't care what it was for Todd. I don't care that he lost 20,000. He runs a jewelry business. Go to his Facebook page. You're going to go see him on Twitter and all these other places. That's what he was doing when I met him. He was running a jewelry business. And he's fairly good at it, according to, everything I ever saw and that we ever talked about. But because of this Yahweh thing and this Hebrew thing or whatever, I don't know, the next thing I'm hearing is that she's complaining because he's wanting multiple wives. Now, I don't care who thinks it's hearsay. Maybe it was hearsay. Maybe she was lying to me. I didn't care about it back then. The only thing I ever told her about being hit by him, and she complained about it, was leave him. I mean, why sit there and get hit? He's bigger than you. Now, I'm going to have Bryan. Bryan, you make the comment, and I'll let you do it. Because the whole thing about the son putting up that page is if his son thought that his dad was a bad father or whatever, then why doesn't it say bad father? Why does it say wife beater? Why would his son do that? Bryan, you listened to the conversation, and Bryan Parker's listened to the conversation. I didn't listen to the conversation, so I have no clue what they had to say about Todd Kynette's son. I have no clue.
Well, I mean, all I got from it was he was trying to explain why that page was up there, and he made it a sob story to, I guess, make you or anybody that was talking about Todd Kynette feel bad about saying anything about that page. And, of course, you just stated what my opinion was on that. Well, if that's the case, his son could have put anything or everything up there that was derogatory in the name of his father, but he chose that particular statement. Why? I would have to presume that's because there is some sense of truth. And the fact that you've had personal dealings with him in the past, it's like, okay, well, whether he wants to pin it on his son or not, really doesn't dismiss the fact of the act.
Well, the claim was the son was a drug addict, and he cut his son off for money, and so that's why his son put it up there. But like you say, the son could have put everything up. Why did he choose that?
Yeah, my dad's a jerk because he cut me off for money. Anybody that has any deductive reason, this is the reason you ask questions like this. Now, at the end of the day, I don't care. I mean, if he wants to follow Keith, hey, more power to you, Todd. I'm sorry for you, man. Go for it.
Well, anyway, we've been on for a while tonight, and like I said, we didn't really plan on covering this topic, but I'm kind of glad we did, because David was able to weigh in, Bryan was able to weigh in with his info, and so was Joe. I don't know, Joe, if you're still with us. I was just going to give a minute before we cut out. Joe, leave us with your last thoughts, and so can Bryan and David, and then we'll end our conversation tonight.
All right. Well, my final thoughts are just kind of, that people need to do their own research, do their own, and don't just take somebody's word for something. My experience in law enforcement, you cannot trust somebody or take somebody's word at face value. Trust but verify, because more often than not, people are lying. That's sad, but that's the reality. And I would encourage that with everything, not just with this individual that we've been talking about tonight, but also with David, with myself, with both Bryan Parker and Bryan Smith, with anybody and everybody. That being said, I think that people going down these rabbit holes of the patriot movements, the birth certificate, the upper and lowercase names, that kind of stuff, they want to waste their time and resources into doing that. Hey, that's great. That's their own choice. But ultimately, I don't think it'll ever get you anywhere. I think the only solution that people have is the right of self-determination. And really, that's the only answer and the way out of the system. Otherwise, if you're going to stay in the system, as David has said several times, you're going to be a slave, be a good one.
Bingo.
Yep. Shut up and behave. Bryan Smith, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, not really. I know the reason why we're talking about Keith and his legal premises is exactly the purpose of letting people know that are looking into his information. These are the things that you need to be questioning and asking of yourself, because at the end of the day, it's not about who's presenting the information. It's about, is the information correct? And, of course, look, this isn't easy. If it was, then everybody would be doing it. There's going to be more individuals that will be, called out or be upset when this information comes out. This is why they're wrong. So, anyway, the only thing I can say is, hey, join Matrix Solutions Network. We got a lot of good information that's going to start being published, and it's all there to help in the path of exercise and self-determination.
Cool. Thanks, Bryan. Appreciate it. And David, I'll let you wrap it up, and you can also discuss your troll committee, I guess, if you want. That'd be a good time.
Like I said, I consider YouTube and Facebook, unfortunately, like George Washington said in his letter to John Jay, we have probably overestimated human nature. I think that the elite and what's going on behind the scenes, the powers that be, whatever they want to call it, I don't really care. I saw honor at the top, and that's what they're looking for at the top. And all that Facebook and YouTube are proving is that people don't have honor. They don't have it. I mean, I cannot believe the number of people. I see a name up here that I saw on your website when I came in named Paul Rowe. And he's talking about, I don't even know what that guy, but he admitted years ago, Bryan, I had Bryan, I told him, I said, get out of these groups, man. They're just unbelievable. All they're doing is eating each other. This was back in, 2014 or 15 or something. I was just like, I wasn't really even paying much attention to it, but I saw him in there with quite a lot, because a lot of us have a desire to see other people get the help that they need. When I have that call Tuesday night, if I can get Dario Bush on there, who's in Bolivia right now, when I went to the Bolivian embassy to help him, I was intent that for one reason and one reason alone, that two wrongs didn't make a right. I did not know whether or not he was guilty. I just knew that the state of Missouri, when they charged him, threw away the evidence. They petitioned the court to throw away the evidence, to use 13 lying witnesses to say, yep, that's the guy that sold me the meth. So I know how this system works. I've seen it. I've seen the dragnets that get formed. And I'm looking at this YouTube stuff, and I'm looking at Facebook going, everybody wants to call each other trolls. Well, I got a definition for a troll, my own. Somebody that's either intentionally promoting a lie or somebody who's facilitating and putting them on a podcast and stuff so they can then participate in promoting the lie. Because you go to prison for one reason. That's for being wrong. You're either wrong about what you're doing, you violated the statute, code, rule, you murdered somebody, you stole. It doesn't make any difference. Those things are wrong. The other reason you go to prison for being wrong is that you're wrong about your standing. Because in U.S. law, it's established in case law that prosecutors are immune from prosecution for knowingly charging an innocent person for a crime that never even occurred. And anybody that thinks they got freedom under that is delusional. But this was how it was in the beginning. This is no different than what John Adams did when he passed the Aliens and Sedition Act, where if you spoke against the government, you went to jail. And in the Jubilee of the Constitution, which I pulled up, people want to claim that there's a separation of powers and there's equal powers and there's all this nonsense. Well, it's all nonsense, because under the Lieber Code, there's only one position that matters, and that's the commander-in-chief. But even John Quincy Adams said in this, it's never been duly remarked that under the Constitution, the powers of the executive department explicitly and emphatically concentrated on one person are vastly more extensive and complicated than those of the legislative. Vastly more extensive. The president shall have the powers of a king. That's what Patrick Henry said. And if that's the system that people want to live under, more power to you. It just wasn't going to serve me, because I was watching people go to prison, and I figured I was going to end up there, and I didn't want to be there. So when you get down to the end of this paragraph, he's actually saying that the powers of the president are unlimited. Then he says the exercise of this more than dictatorial power. More than dictatorial. This is black ink on white paper, Jubilee of the Constitution. Anybody that doesn't believe it. And so what we're going to focus on, honestly, with the Matrix Solutions Network and the things that are coming out, on the first website, Matrix Solutions, I had 13 rabbit holes there. The language rabbit hole, the government is God, science, health, the legal rabbit hole, false history. The false history is the one that has everyone trapped, because it's a propaganda wheel. And it operates on one neurolinguistic programming system based on Von Gogh's saying that the best slave is the man that thinks he's free. So every time I go to these Facebook groups and YouTube pages, that is the only argument I see is people arguing needlessly about a program that they have no clue what they're even arguing about. It's like watching people trying to play tennis with ping pong paddles. It's ridiculous. It means nothing. And coming in here to Facebooks and YouTubes and chewing each other out and whining and griping and complaining. The United States destroys other nations. They're talking about murdering people in Venezuela now. The sanctions have already killed off 40,000. This is the reason I didn't want to have anything else to do with it. And I saw an opening with self-determination, and that's it. But unraveling the program has got to be, this is a false history thing. And what's really impressive, I'll tell you, Bryan, is this. Put out an email recently on this book that came out by Nelson called The Royalist Revolution, where he actually says in there that everybody thinks that they got monarchy light, when the reality is they got monarchy plus. This is a military-industrial complex. This is the way it runs. They put a military flag in the courtrooms. Now, I don't have a problem if people want to be under it. I called it a Matrix Solutions because the Matrix said, hey, all these people in here, the woman in the red dress scene or whatever, all these people in here, most of them are so inert, so enamored with the system that they're going to fight to defend it. I didn't want anything else to do with it at all. I just didn't know that doing what the founders did and building something new was already extant in the law of nations and international law, that this is the self-determination. If you want out, you have to build another state. You have to build another society. And it's extant in U.S. law, case law on this, that the only way to divest yourself from United States citizenship is to undergo a naturalization process in a foreign jurisdiction. Either that or you have to create the new state. You have to establish. That's what's in U.S. Resolution 26. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I saw when I was researching things, and I was looking at what all the different patriot movements were doing and everything, and I saw they were all going to jail, and I'm like, they're missing something. And this is what I've always said, go back to the beginning to figure things out. And you go back to the beginning of the U.S., and you'll see the Declaration of Independence. Oh, gee, what did they do? They started out doing a separation. And so that's the only thing you can do. You can't fight from within. You can't change things from within. It's never going to work because you truly don't belong to the organization to start with. So how are you going to change it from within? That's impossible. You have to start anew. And my recommendation too, like David was saying, people looking at the different social sites and everything, you're not going to find the answer there. The answer is pick up a book. Go buy the Law of Nations, read it. I've got 2 different copies of it, and I've got a copy of it online. If people just want to listen to it, message me. I'll send it to you. Find things that really matter. Find the things that are the foundations of how governments are created and how people are established, how you establish your standing and capacity. That's the only way to do it. Thank you, David.
Well, I appreciate it. The only reason I really wanted to talk about it is you and I talked about it on Monday. Is throwing something up on a page that says charging instrument and trying to pretend that somehow he's under. I mean, I don't know, man. I hope they don't come at you and find a clothing that works for you that has straps in the back or something. I haven't left Jacksonville, and I'm too busy to have to worry about this kind of thing, except for the fact that I don't want to see people go to prison. I don't want to see him go to prison. Those prisons are horrible. I've already told you how horrible they were. I didn't want in them. And I saw what they were doing to people. Dario Bush, if I hadn't gone to the embassy on his behalf back in 2010, he was looking at 30, 60 years. And the only thing I did was show him how they could help him through the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. That's all I did was sit down and show him that. And I showed him procedure in the U.S. courts that the legal attaché was unaware of. The U.S. stepped in. They remanded it up to U.S. federal court. They appointed a special public defender for him. They dispensed with the matter through a diversion agreement. He got monitored by pretrial services for 18 months, and then he went home. That's how it ended. But hey, I'll say this too. Everybody's at choice, just like they said in the Matrix movie. You like sitting in 10x10s? Go ahead and be a subversive to the U.S. government. They bomb people for that.
Yeah, it's not going to be a pretty outcome.
All right. That's enough for me. Thanks, Bryan. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for bouncing on. We were just doing kind of an open mic night tonight. And this is something that really what these calls were set up for, because people come into the group with so many questions and stuff like that. And it's like, well, what better way to handle those kind of questions or topics than to come on the discussion group and talk it out? Because it won't just help you, it'll help a whole bunch of other people who have the same exact kind of questions and the same exact kind of issues. And so, anyway, until next Sunday night, like I tell everybody, the three things people need to learn, because everybody always asks, where do I start? To me, the three things you need to learn is who you really are, where you're really at, and where you're really from. Because there's a lot of people deceiving you on all levels about all three of those things. So, until next week, thank you all. Catch you later.
Thanks, Bryan.